Rye, a staple grain in many countries, is enjoying a surge in popularity here in the United States. Once used as a bread staple, rye is now sprouting up in many restaurant kitchens, from cocktails to pastas and even in desserts. I think you'll be surprised at the bold flavor that it brings to the topping for a delicious rhubarb and raspberry crisp. Rhubarb, by the way, is not a fruit, it's a vegetable. And it's an ancient one, cultivated for medicinal purposes in China as long as 5,000 years ago. In the United States, it's most often treated as a fruit, however, and it's also been dubbed the pie plant. The first records of anyone cooking with it date as far back as the 17th century in England, but it really didn't gain in popularity as an ingredient for baking until the early 19th century. And every colonial garden had a patch of rhubarb. By the way, if you're going to grow it, and it's very nice to have in the garden, try to find a variety that has nice red stalks. Look how pretty this is. Now, before you start your crisp, I suggest that you add to 1.5 pounds of rhubarb stalks cut up, 2/3 of a cup of sugar, and let it sit for a half an hour or so. The sugar will cause the juices in the rhubarb to flow a little bit, and you want that juiciness in your crisp. So even before you finish the filling, this is the filling, you can start making the topping. By the way, rhubarb stalks are edible. The leaves are toxic and should be removed. Don't even put the leaves in your compost. It has an oxalic acid in it, and it can cause stomach disorders, so throw those away. For the topping, well, this is the crispy topping that we are going to make out of all-purpose flour as well as rye flour. And the rye flour will give it a little bit of a tanginess, which is really, really delicious. So into your food processor. Now you can do this by hand. If you have one of these pastry cutters, you can use this. But I find for biscuits, for crisp toppings, I just use my food processor. So 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour and 1/2 cup of rye flour. And 1/2 cup of butter. You can see it's cut into like 1/4-inch pieces, and the butter should be icy cold. And just pulse it just for a couple seconds. If the butter is cold, it will cut nicely without getting mushy. That's about right. That's it. You see how many few seconds? It'll take you longer if you do it by hand. And into here, add 1/2 cup of dark brown sugar, 1/2 cup of oats. Now the oats are what's going to give a nice crunch to your crisp topping. And those are all-purpose regular oats. And 1/4 cup, if you like, of a kind of a nut. It goes well with walnuts, hazelnuts. These are hazelnuts, coarsely chopped. You can add even almonds. And that's cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. And this is the topping. You can make a lot of this and freeze it in closed plastic bags or even in quart containers or pint containers in your freezer. And then you can easily make crisps when your berries are ripe. And now, back to the rhubarb. Yeah, it's already showing signs of moisture. Add 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour to your rhubarb. That will help thicken the juices. Rhubarb's very juicy when cooked. And for flavor, the zest of a bright-skinned orange. Rhubarb and orange go very well together. And I'm just going to use my little wooden reamer. And now stir this all together, and then very carefully fold in your berries. You can use 1/2 pint of fresh or thawed frozen raspberries, but be careful not to smush them too much. Raspberries are one of the softer berries, and we're adding it for color, and we're adding it for the tart flavor, and I love to add it to rhubarb. And now fill your ramekins. You can make one simple oval crisp if you like, or you can use pretty little ramekins like this. I love these, and this is a very healthy size. This is a 9-ounce ceramic ramekin. So if your guests are hungry and love crisp, this will be a good size for them. And notice I've lined my baking sheet with parchment and butter, the Ramekins, with soft room temperature butter. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees because it should be hot when you put these in the oven. Then the topping. And I sort of like to do this with my fingers. Just squeeze it a little bit in your hand and put a handful right on top. This is a generous amount of topping. This will cook up very crispy, you'll see. And put this right into your oven and bake, rotating halfway through the baking time until the topping is browned and crisp and the juices are bubbling in the centers. And that takes approximately 30 minutes. So let these cool a little bit before serving. It's nice to serve with ice cream, whipped cream, with sorbet, and use your lovely ice cream scoop to make a perfect oval of ice cream. Place it on top and serve immediately. Crisps are best served the day they're made, and I think you'll agree that this rhubarb and raspberry crisp hits all the right flavors. Enjoy.